drink and stuff.
Okay.
Drop it. Somebody have my. Oh, you have my phone.
Yes.
Is everything going through so far?
But he has not received a receipt yet. But it's all live.
It's all live. So
Whoever wants to can use access.
So let's say we are live, right? What's the link? What do we?
ARCHIAFRIKA's YouTube channel.
Okay.
You should just go there. Lecture at Jamestown. Lecture at
YouTube live YouTube.
Lecture at Jamestown.
If you Google that, that's it.
Or if you go to ARCHIAFRIKA.
Adventure. Which Adventure? Oh, which one? Adventure Diaspora. Yes. No. I can look at it. I'll talk a little bit about our initiative. Joel, let's show the initiatives for a minute, then I can talk about them. This is for the Q&A. Just showing the Jamestown initiative. Say it. Now I can point to the Okay. Yes. Good evening. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm a nobody really, but I'm called Joel Sayari. And I'm an architect and also an advocate. It's a bit noisy, right? I'm also an advocate for how creativity should be able to assist in Africa's development agenda. I mean, we always look at politicians and economists, to lead us in how we develop ourselves. I think as architects and as creative people, we have a huge role to play. And it's so wonderful to have professors and teachers of architecture from our local universities here with their students. We have professionals with their interns and their staff. We have city officials who have supported us greatly, and I must take this opportunity to thank Mr. Victor Mensah, who's the AMA architect, who gives us the permits for these kinds of projects that we're trying to do. So a big round of applause for you, Victor. I'll tell you a funny story about Victor quickly. So we sent him all these beautiful drawings the other day, and he gave us this approval. He calls me 6 weeks later and said, Joe, I drive by here every day. I don't see what you're doing. oh, Victor, this is Ghana. He said, no, we are not in Ghana. You and I, we're not in Ghana. We should play at it. So I said, thank you, Victor. So now you can see the landscaping is happening, our trees are happening, and so forth. So thank you very much for that little prod. And we needed that. Thank you. So this is the ARCHIAFRIKA gallery, and I thought I would just take a minute to share with you some of our initiatives. Joel, are you just going? It's here. Oh, sorry. Bushman, look at me playing with this here. Okay. So I'll just run through quickly about why we are in Jamestown. Why are we here? So this is this space. This is what started this all. This is an old historic building of 1915, the Tapa House, and this is what it looked like. And this is what we're going to turn it into. Basically, a gathering place that demonstrates that you don't have to tear down old buildings to revitalize it. So this is just a very simple experiment about coming to a community, looking at the rich architectural heritage and stock, and see what you can do with it. So these are the exhibitions. This is the current exhibition. Our next exhibition will be up on Saturday, which is an exhibition on a few African architects that we know. And this is our big idea of how do we engage, starting from here, and look at some of the natural assets of Jamestown and Ashtown, Gamashi broadly, but places like the Water Club. The Water Club is a phenomenal historical music venue, which is now dead. And we have many such places across the entire country. Places which were a vital, BB, come to the front please, which are a vital part of our cultural heritage, entertainment heritage, which are now, see that, only B can stop me from giving it on the lecture, only B. So what can we do with places like this, and the markets, and Ashtown, and the old Kingsway, which is across the street? How can we, through design, trigger change in our own small way? So we're looking at of the city. So I'll just flip through very quickly. This is our vision for the space in between the old Kingsway and our building. To me, African architecture lies within the interstitial spaces. It's not about buildings, really. We over-focus on edifice, but this is where the soul of architecture lies within our continent, the landscape and the open spaces. So this is the solar kiosk, which is now being installed. How do we create a market environment where the community can gather, and also there's also commerce? And I think all these things should be underpinned by economy. Money must exchange hands, and this is what creative people often forget. Without a full cycle of economic exchange, what we're doing is not. It has to sustain itself. Yeah? Go through quickly. Good. So this just gives you an idea of the three key projects that we're working on now, which is this gallery, the solar kiosk, and the garden. And Victor mentioned that doesn't know this, but we're looking for a permit for our new cafe. So I want to just sign it right now for me. Let me start my work. So anyway, thanks for coming in. So this evening we're here to celebrate and support our great friend Frank Amankwa. And for those of you who didn't see the invite, when I started this whole initiative of discussions and discourse and advocacy, we used to have a thing called Adventures in the Diaspora, which we had at the Golden Tulip once a month. And it was a very simple idea of how can we shine light on creatives who otherwise would not be known about. And this was a very simple idea, and the first person who spoke at our first event was Frank Amankwa. So it's a full cycle, and Frank is a wonderful young architect from Ghana, but based in London, doing incredible things. So on that note, Frank, the stage is here. We have chairs in the front too, so you guys.
very much. Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. Joe sprung this on me 2 days ago, so I came to visit him in Jamestown, and he showed me all the wonderful things that he's doing here, and said, "Oh, Frank, you must come and give a lecture and give a talk about some of the work that you're doing." So it has been a bit rushed to put together something. I was a bit unprepared, but what I thought I'll discuss is to build on Joe's theme as he's talking about old buildings in Jamestown, and I'll talk about buildings that I've worked on in the UK, which is refurbishing old buildings, and how they began to influence the architecture that I do, and how that has also affected some of the architecture that I've done here in Ghana at the same time. So I was born in Ghana, I live in the UK. I used to work for a large architectural firm called Allied & Morrison. One of the very first projects I did when I came out of university was a project called the Hospital Project, which is in the centre of London, called Endell Street. Louder. Okay, can everybody hear me? Yes. Louder. Okay. What this was, London and the UK is full of historic buildings. There's over 3,000 historic buildings dating back from the 15th century right up to the 18th century. And the architectural premise, we have an English heritage there, which preserves most of the buildings and the building stock throughout the UK. The majority of architects that work in the UK will either be developing new buildings or working with existing buildings like this. This was a former hospital building which was derelict and run down and disused. And the project that we worked on was to convert this into a recording studio, into a restaurant, into a bar, and to a private members club. So because it's in a conservation area, and conservation is not the same as preservation. Certain elements of certain buildings within the UK, we are able to keep, and certain parts of buildings you can take down, depending on the grading and the listing of the building. So with this particular building, we demolished one facade, retained two facades, and built a whole new modern facade which integrated with the existing one together, creating a brand new space, a new civic building in the centre of town. The beauty about doing that is that you can demolish the interior completely, you can create a whole new space three-dimensionally, and you can bring a modern element into a building which is being disused, give it a new lease of life and a new function. Down in the basement was a large 3-story recording studio which we dug down into the basement for. This was a recording studio for Dave Stewart, who was the former band member of the Rhythmics, and he funded the project privately. He lived in Covent Garden, loved the building, and wanted to save the building from disrepair. And that is why we built this building. Another building which I really like, which I want to show you, and you've probably seen it as well. This is Zaha Hadid's Serpentine Gallery. Now, the Serpentine again was a power station which was disused, and the Sackler Gallery decided to convert that building into a modern gallery and commissioned Zaha, who was completely the antithesis of doing traditional buildings. He does very modern buildings, very dynamic buildings. And you can see that on the one side you have Zaha's vision, and on the other side you have the historic building, which he has married the two together fantastically. The central part of the plan is the main gallery. The other part is a conference centre, a restaurant, and also a function suite. I think Zaha described it as a symbiosis of coming together of two different parts, which is true of this building. And it sits within Kensington Gardens in the centre of London. But the beauty about this is that because of the English heritage, and for us being able to preserve buildings which have also a historical value, you can add to it with a modern element as well, which you create a whole different experience. So with that, I've been working, quite a lot of the buildings which I work on are either refurbishments in the UK. So this is a typical, well not a typical London street. This is a house conversion in the centre of London. And the clients, most buildings in the UK are from the Victorian period, or Victorian terraced houses that most people live in. So with this particular building, the internal spaces are very small and Victorian and were predated back to the 18th century. Most modern families now that live inside these buildings find them a bit more restrictive, and it's not conducive to modern life and to modern families and how they grow. So family space is really sought after on the ground floor. This is the typical entrance into this house with a very small dining area, a reasonable sized kitchen, but they wanted a bigger kitchen, a living room, and then upstairs, the bedrooms. The nature of the properties have smaller sloping roofs upstairs in the bedroom. So the client wanted to expand the building to create more space, much more family area to live in, and also to create much more headroom and space for the children in the upper floors. So the existing plan here shows that's the main entrance as you come in the staircase, with the kitchen and dining room areas here and the living rooms in the front. So the proposal sorry. I think it's crashed. So we looked at how we're going to work with this building and what we're going to do with it. So the first thing was to create the additional space was to demolish most of the external walls on the ground floor, extend it at the rear and on the side, either with the solid or glass roofs. But this requires a great intervention to do with the structure, how we deal with the existing building structurally as well, and also the level of differences between the roofs and how that interacts with the neighbouring buildings. We came up with different plans and various options for the client, how the living spaces, how the sequencing works from when you enter the building at the beginning to how the family spaces would work at the rear of the property. In the end, we have a much larger footprint of the building, where the existing footprint of the building was here. So by extending it and extending this way, and by creating a much larger open plan living space, they get a much more larger family dwelling on the ground floor. So, and extending into the loft on the upper floor. We also looked at the relationship between the neighbouring properties and the roof heights as well, due to planning constraints because of the height differentiation between the two properties. So one side was slightly lowered than the other to create, so we can blend that in with the neighbouring property. So the sequence of construction requires a great deal of demolition. So we demolished, the majority of the ground floor was demolished. We put in a whole new concrete plank floor. We built a steel structure to support the extension. We then extended up on the upper, we took out the whole roofscape on the upper floor. We extended it. And in the end, we came up with a building which then gave them greater volume downstairs and a greater volume upstairs, with the result with the extension which is clad in aluminium on the ground floor. So it becomes a much more modern building from what it was previously before. And the upper floor, rather than it being a very congested floor, by raising the volume of the height, we've created a 2-story volume at the upper deck, which is quite unusual in the Victorian property. So it becomes a much more double height space, where you can see what the sloping roof was before, was the limit of the roofscape. So by raising it up, we've created a nice modern feel, but also blends in with the existing building fabric. So when I was approached to design a house in Ghana, and it was quite a big house, one of the things which look, we have a lot of historical buildings in England, and one of them which I really loved and I liked is this building called Lanhydrock, which is a mansion house. It's in Cornwall. It's part of English heritage. The family do not own it anymore, but it's a beautiful house and it's an example of how you can create the spaces between the houses, the layout and the plan of the house, which is really important to me. The landscape and how the house sits in between the buildings is also quite important, and it's also a very rich and important element with the architecture. And also how the plan works. For me, the plan is one of the most important things about when you're looking at, when you take examples from historical buildings. One thing that they do very, very well is that the majority of these spaces were built from you move from space to space without a corridor. Unlike most conventional houses where you have a corridor and then rooms which are then offsets. This allowed you to be able to walk from one room to another room to another room. There was a procession in it, there was a sequence, there was, to the left side of the building is where most of the servants and the staff were, and to the right side of the building was where the majority of the family lived. So from different types of rooms, from a billiards room to a smoking room to the gentleman's room, there was a rich variety within inside this plan, which I liked a great deal. Where there was corridors, these became rooms themselves. They were not places that you walk through just to get somewhere. Everything has a meaning behind it. And then great halls within inside these spaces. Another project which I also looked at as well, which is this one by Stephen Marshall Architects, was they were commissioned to reconvert some old barns in Aylesbury in London. And as you can see, this was a farmhouse, these were stable buildings on this side. And the two new buildings at the rear became an archive centre and an office building. They retained the footprint of the existing courtyard space between the two traditional buildings and built two new ones on the rear, also creating the courtyard. The beauty I like about this building is that they've retained the agricultural artistic they've retained the architectural language of the buildings that were there previously before, with the timber barn-like doors, an open plan courtyard space, and the timber louvers are there to act as a screening to the galleries and to the reading rooms. But they've also retained the pitched roofs and the scale and the size of the buildings and the proportions of the buildings match what was there previously before. So when I came to do this project in the brief, there was a lot of research which we did before, and what this house was going to be, and what this house was going to look like, and what was going to influence this property, which was built on top of a hill. So I came up with an idea. This building is it's not a vernacular building, it's blocked into the landscape. But for me, the most important part of the building is the sequence and the plan, and how you approach the building, how the building is viewed, and how the building uses the landscape and the terrain to be able to create the different levels within inside it. The basement floor here But as you approach the building from the top, the main important thing for this building was that we didn't want any corridors within inside this building. So you move from one space to the other. You were greeted by a central lobby space, which is the first focal point of the building. Then you have your living room, dining room, the music area, kitchen, bedrooms to the rear, study and a library here, and the staircase takes you down the gallery on this side. So the plan itself reads very well, and it flows very well when you're in the building as you move from one space to the other. It's a building without necessarily too many internal walls. The basement floor houses 2 more bedrooms as well as another kitchen. And then the upper floor is where we have 4 more bedrooms and a family area in the centre. So because of the nature of the site, you can gradually, the building sits horizontally, but then because of as it slopes, there's a natural basement level which is created because of the hill. So this is the model that we made of the property before we started to get built. So the project started back in 2000, and every year I came back to Ghana to supervise the work as it was constructed. There was a lot of work that went into it in terms of how it works in the tropical climate. I looked at how the building would be ventilated, how the building would be constructed, the materials that we used, and also visually, window sills. We created concrete window sills, double skin blockwork walls, pocket windows. Most of the timber frame windows and everything else is made here in Ghana by Fern Art. We did a lot of testing with the windows. We built some prototypes, we took them in to get them installed to see how they would work, to show the guys how to then go continue to make all the rest of the windows for the building. Towards the west side of the building we have large views to maximise the views in a brief. So again, we came up with the window system, which worked with the sliding door on the left and 2 ventilated windows on the top. The ventilated windows allowed us to be able to, because it was a concrete deck roof, in the evening it dissipates most of the heat into the building. So to get the heat out of the building, it ventilates out through the upper story windows. We then built some prototypes. Framing. And then we imported the glass which we bought from China, which we then fitted. And then there's also a major feature part of this house as well, which is the staircase as you enter into the house. So the staircase, I wanted it to be a cantilever staircase, and we decided, an engineer, a friend of mine in the UK, helped me design the staircase. So we engineered it as a terrazzo precast concrete stair with intermediate. We designed these spaces which are in between, which makes it into a cantilevered stair. It's similar to it's traditional to a Georgian staircase in the UK. We tested it to make sure that it was going to work. We made some prototypes of the precast slabs, and then we installed it, and it works perfectly well. We then landscaped the rest of the property, planted quite a lot of plants during the construction of the building, so that by the end of the process, when the building was completed, the garden and the vegetation and everything else would be much more speed. So this is a shot of it now, as of today. That is the approach from the top of the hill as you're approaching the building. That's the main entrance as you come in to the building, with the 2 bedrooms on the ground floor. There's a staircase that takes you down to the basement, a bridge walkway that takes you through to the main front door. This side is where the garage is. As you come down into the basement, there's a swimming pool in the basement, there's a lawn area directly outside. Most of the bedrooms, actually all of the bedrooms, have an external space directly outside. There's no insular spaces at all inside this building. The west face is majority glass, so you have from the west facing sun and the views. The swimming pool. Veranda for the bedrooms above, for the library spaces and for the living rooms. The main entrance as you come in, on the ground floor. We clad quite a lot of it. We used very minimal materials, mainly timber, tiles, and white painted walls. So we kept the material palette down to a very minimum. That's the main entrance. That's the staircase now. The upper floor, where the bedrooms are. External balconies to the bedrooms. And that's it.
Frank, thank you very much. Can we have a Q&A for about 20 minutes or 15 minutes? Will that be okay?
That's fine. Good. Yeah.
Yes, Frank.
How much of a consideration do you take into daylight to be able to reduce the amount of electricity that has to be used for light?
How much? Sorry.
How much of daylight
Daylight.
did you take into consideration to reduce the amount of electricity that has to be used for light in the place?
Oh, for lighting the place. Yes, that was taken into consideration. The majority of it is about, I would say, 60% glazed throughout the building. On the south facing side, there's hardly any windows at all, so we don't get any solar gain on the south. Most of the glazing is on the west facing side, where the sun is at its lowest point and it is slightly cooler. We have overhanging eaves on that side as well. During the day, we don't use any daylights at all throughout the building. There's enough natural light throughout the building, but there's no power that's used during the day. It's only at night that we use the lighting. It's solar powered. We have 25,000 kVA solar power to power the building. We don't use all of it if the building is fully occupied, then yes, we will do. But again, it's a case of managing how we use the lighting within the building during the day, during the evening time. There's an air-conditioned unit in there, but in Abri it's much cooler than it is in Accra. This time of year we haven't used the air conditioning at all, so it's only during the Hamilton season that it gets used. We're connected to the grid, but as of next year we won't be using the grid at all. We'll have a backup generator, diesel one, just in case, but then the majority of it, now we have solar. During the day it's powered by solar, and the solar charges the batteries, and at night we use the batteries to be able to power the house. So, water. With the water, we harvest all the rainwater from the top of the roofs of the building. We have a 30,000 litre tank in the basically, which is underground. We've just recently done a borehole as well. So the borehole mainly is to be used to water the grounds and the plants, because we're finding that we couldn't harvest enough rainwater for the landscape. So the borehole is used for that, and also the borehole is used to top up the swimming pool as well.
That's what they drink also. That's what they drink also.
No. Yes. No. We haven't purified the water yet for drinking.
So which one is they drink?
We drink water.
Because I was thinking that they could, the bottled water is to a very large extent pure.
Yes.
So it could depend on that.
Yeah.
And then you save your money.
Yeah. Combine it on water. Exactly. Sometimes it's just a bit of architectural flair. The main bit of it was, as I said before, was the plan, how the plan came together, which is the most important part. Once the plan was fixed and it worked very well, which we worked very hard to get the plan to work well and to get the levels to work very well on the site. But the rest of the building kind of it built itself really. It built itself. It becomes a byproduct of the hard work that you've done previously before. So for me, the plan and the approach, the landscape, the direction it takes, how it's set up the landscape, those are the main important criteria, those are the main important decisions. But everything else was just consequence of those key decisions which were made. So, it's not flat, it drains. Yes, it's a concrete roof. Yes. On a flat concrete roof. Also because of the profile of the building, I wanted the profile to be quite low. As one of the shots, as you see from the beginning, because it's in the hillside, we wanted the building to sit into the valley and quite low. The pitched roof wouldn't suit this building at all, I don't think. And plus, I don't like pitched roofs.
I have a question about form.
Yes.
Why did you make the edge of the soup round?
Rounded.
Yes.
Rather than square.
Maybe, why I asked that question is you made reference to Zaha Hadid.
Yes.
And I was, figuring out that possibly the form might have
Yeah, this was done in 2000. It was before Zaha was doing particle curves as well. So, yeah, she was much more deconstructivist at that time. Yeah. We softened up. I decided to soften up the edges for most of the building, so it wasn't so harsh. It's more of an expression than anything else.
But let's come back to the roof that you referred to. In the tropics, I worked in Peduase, and back in the days in the 60s when they were building all these buildings, a lot of them were flat roofs.
Yes.
Over time, we have had to even some of them pitch roofs on it because of the effect of the weather, time on the concrete form. I don't know if
No, I did a lot of research into the roof at the time. The roof is done by a company called Accra, who are based in Ghana. They're a South African company. And I worked a lot on flat roofs in the UK for many years and used different types of materials, from rubber to geoplastics, from felt roofs as well. And in the tropics, the majority of those roofs didn't work. What Adro had was a fantastic product, which is basically a geotextile membrane, which is like a cotton wool piece of paper. It's an unbonded roof, so it doesn't bond to the concrete. So they lay this down and then they paint a waterproof layer which on top of this roof. So that throughout. So there's 3 layers of paint on top of it. It allows the roof to be able to breathe and move with the heat and contraction and expansion of the concrete. The reason why most flat roofs fail is because they cannot perform the contraction and expansion of the flat roof. That's the reason why they cracks. This roof has the building is split into 2. Where that leaning wall is on one side, there's an expansion joint in between the 2. So we've created a lapped expansion joint movement gap in between the waterproofing system, and the roof has never leaked. Where it has leaked is through the pipe work, but not through the roof.
I don't know how long.
How long has this building sat on the landscape?
This since about 2001, 2002.
2001, 2002, around 2016,
Yeah.
creatures like 40, 30, 40. I've had the pleasure of visiting this building. They are building that weapon to anybody who has any appreciation for architecture. there's that part of architecture that says it's not possible. Because I think it's not possible, it's not an architecture. So architecture is to try to answer new questions and try to play new forms. So I think for me the biggest triumph of this was that basing the discussion on the failure of the flat, obviously because we mentioned agro and the fact that if a roof is well constructed, well detailed, it should be able to work. That's why I'm asking the number of years. Again, I find greatly the utility of that roof because you're able to walk up there. I think one of the general aims, if I'm not wrong, is to try and deck the roof as an outdoor system.
That's right.
That tell us
to be quite honest, even the client had resistance against the flat roof at the beginning. Everybody had resistance against the flat roof because of historically, but the majority of flat roofs that were built in the 60s, the technology wasn't there to be able to, in the tropics, to be able to roof them at this stage. The technology is there now, so there's no reason why you can't build flat roofs in the tropics.
Those studies done of this material, how well it does in the tropics, the lifespan, because I mean, the KUSD example, another flat roof around the system that we know about, stood for like 30, 40 years before they failed. Or probably.
Well, historically, there's no flat roof that I have come across that's lasted more than 25 years, even in the UK. They always have a 25-year warranty, but then you'll then have to go back and re-maintain that
So
roof.
this material on the life of the wall. I mean, are there studies on the material and what's the lifespan? Where else have they been used in the tropics and how well are they used?
It's a well-known product in South Africa. It has a 15-year lifespan. Every 5 years they come and they put a single coating on top of the roof. And since then, it's worked pretty well. I'll see what happens at the end of 15 years, but I doubt if we'll have to. Yes, and it's still there, so I doubt if we'll have to replace that roof. I very doubt it very much. It's a great product. For me, ADVENTURER are a specialist in waterproofing products. They don't just do flat roofs. They do tanking for damp-proof membranes for basements, for swimming pools. They do a lot of waterproofing products. They have a real richness of products.
Any questions from the students? Students, say something, ask something. Your professors are taking over.
I actually wanted to ask
Louder.
the idea, the big idea behind the
Okay.
what influenced you, what influenced, and also if, for instance, if the clients didn't have the luxury of money, you still have achieved the big idea.
Yes, it would have been a different concept. Yes, definitely. If there was a budget constraint on the project, there was a budget constraint on the project anyway at the time. To be quite honest, to build this building today in Ghana's climate, I think would be very difficult for us to be able to build it and to fund it financially. But back then, when we were building, there was much more better opportunity. 15 years ago, the opportunities were there to be able to do this type of construction, and it was a challenge as well to go ahead and to do something a bit more radical, not something more mainstream, and do something which was, to make a bit more of an architectural statement, and also something that has longevity. That it wasn't fashionable. It wasn't looking at what anybody else was doing, but it just responded specifically to that climate, that landscape, and to what we wanted that building to do. So it came about. I can't say that it was a huge epiphany and a huge idea came out of it, because when I studied architecture, an idea comes about through discussion and also understanding the key areas that you want to address and the problems that you are facing and how you tackle those problems to come together with a solution. So the building is a byproduct of all of that. It's not just an idea which just comes out of nothing, out of thin air overnight. It is based on, there was many different, I could show you many different sketches and different variations of how the building was going to be. You know, it was split into two bits. There was one bit at the bottom of the hill, there was another bit at the top of the hill. So there was a whole series of you know, sketches and ideas, and of looking at the plan and of looking at how it worked before we came up with the final solution.
Just in the context of the location of the building and what you saw happening around, as there were other buildings that were happening in the green area. Obviously, like you rightly said, this looks radically different from everything you see in that area. So that's the question, what's your opinion about what's happening in the green? And should it continue? Should there be a new way? As an architect, sure, for interpretation.
My opinion is that for me, as Joe rightly pointed out, that there seems to be perhaps a Western culture which has been imposed on Ghana, and a way of living that potentially maybe not necessarily is the way that most people want to live over here. You know, this house is built for a European client. You know, she's lived abroad and she's coming here, so the luxury and everything else of what is abroad is what she wants to bring over here. You know, if I was building for a Ghanaian client, it would be a completely different building. You know, it would be responsive to how they live, how the family nucleus is, and how that all works together. What I find about most of the buildings that I see there in Accra at the moment is very insular. It doesn't tell me anything about, you know, they're just big grand buildings with loads of punch windows and pitched roofs. There is nothing at all about it that responds to the landscape, that responds to the environment that they're in, and also tells me anything about the family nucleus, or who's actually going to be living there and how that building is going to be used. You know, as I said before, those traditional English buildings had great heritage, and you know, they used the landscape, the approach to the building was important, the procession throughout the building was important. All of those elements are hugely important in architecture, and that's through generations and generations of architects coming through and looking at history and influencing their design, future designs, and that makes us that's what makes us modern, and that's what makes us more progressive. Yes.
Apart from preference. Apart from preference.
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 Apart from the fact that I like this. It's a white.
White for the building.
Yes.
It reflects the sun. Reflects the sun.
Any questions from the young adventurers? Okay, good.
I wanted to ask, you used a lot of timber.
Yes.
I love timber, but it's always difficult to find craftsmen who understand and know how to put it together.
Yes.
So that it looks nice. And I just want to know, how difficult was it, and how did you manage to get such a nice product?
It's a good question. The use of timber, we could have done it in aluminium, easily done it in aluminium, and imported the windows over here. But because the building's been built in Ghana has a rich history of timber, we thought that it would be a travesty not to use timber. And you know, it's a difficult material to get hold of as well. And a country which is, you know, has an abundance of timber here, which is crazy, which I can't understand. So it does push the price up as well. So economically it didn't make sense, but aesthetically it did. And for the reasons for that, for the type of building we wanted to create, it did. I did a trial. We went to 4 different shop fitters, manufacturers, and the first one was we made the first window. This one we made. I bought the material from. Okay. These ones. These windows, the mechanism that opens the windows, the awning materials, was bought from the UK. It's an Italian manufacturer that makes it. It was a system which I liked a lot because it allowed you to buy the cutters, bring all the tooling here to Ghana, and then basically then we had the cutting drawings for the machinery for all of the window component parts. And then so I imported that and we gave it to 3 different manufacturers to do a trial to see who would make the best window. So we had one company called, one was Fernand, one was called Princess, and one was Mahogany. And Mahogany's one was okay, Fernand's one was the best, and the guy from Princess made it the very, very last minute, and he drove to the airport to give it to me just before I was going to board the plane to show me what he had done. And he had done, it was okay, but he was desperate to get the commission for the job. But we felt that there was no way. He was a lovely man, but there was no way I was going to give him that project to be able to do. So we, in the end, because Fernand produced that one window really well, and it's the same. Once you've done one, you can do the others. It's just a variation of scale. That's all it was. So we tested it. But for the majority of the craftsmanship in the building, everything was done in the same way. Everything was done by trial and error and finding the right craftsman to be able to come and to do it.
I want to commend you because I think the architecture should teach, and your building has taught Fernand something that they didn't know before.
Yes.
And you taught the women craftsmen something that they didn't know before. I want to commend you.
I've done some work previously with Fernand, and I might be biased, but with Fernand, you won't go wrong with Fernand and me. You don't need to look elsewhere to do Fernand. Their prices are quite steep, but it's worth it. You might want to try them.
Do you use cavity walls?
We've got, there's a cavity rule, yes. And it's the two skins of block.
That's why you have this one of those windows I saw that.
That's the window. That's why the windows are so deep. That's why. Yes.
My final question, I wanted to know what's the square area and do you know the cost per square meter?
Oh, good question. I don't know the cost per square meter.
Never ask an architect. never ask an architect per square meter cost. Never.
It's about 1,500 square meters, the whole house.
Dollars. Good. Okay. A big round of applause for Frank. So ARCHIAFRIKA Gallery is here. The cafe is opening up in the next 30 days, which is across the street. Our kiosk is serving beer, Fanta, all kinds of things. But it's on the serious note, we are here to, in our own small way, contribute to the improvements that Jamestown needs. And I encourage all of us, we have a role to play in our own communities. It doesn't have to be in Jamestown. I'm from Accra. It needs a lot of help. How do we engage using design? And that's the role of the architect. The African architect is a very different animal than that from the West. They have all the systems in place. You can just go and design buildings. We have to create the system and the narrative. So let's not forget that. Thank you very much indeed. We have the new exhibition, but we can't see this. Let me make it bigger. The Jamestown Chronicles, which is opening on Saturday. We have from Côte d'Ivoire, Issa Diabate, from Niger, Kamara, from Cameroon, Joseph Conte, from Burkina Faso, Francis Kere, from Nigeria, Dayo from Nigeria, Rura and Access from Nigeria, Dave Dajay from Ghana, the funny guy from Joado, from Napani from Ghana, Leanne Mpola from South Africa, Kenneth Makeke from South Africa, Maxwell Mutane from Zimbabwe, and Ingendo from Kenya, and then our students, Central University, and what I teach, TU Delft, what they did this year, we're going to share that, and last year. So that's Saturday is a soft opening. We'll have the proper opening in October, where Kerry and all those guys are going to be here. But so we'll see you Saturday afternoon at 5. It'll be open. So it's just coming in and seeing the wonderful work of our colleagues in the diaspora and in Ghana. Thank you very much. Thank you. Drinks? Conversations?
No. You always catch me on the hop.
You know me.
I need to come better prepared the next time I go. We intended to be there all the time, but we added it about 3 years ago. Yeah. We put the solar on the roof. The roofscape was always designed as solar panels on the roofscape.
Is it possible to visit the place?
Yeah.
Talk to the owner about how much savings or whatnot from the solar or how the solar performs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'll be around for another week, so maybe next week.
She's there. I'm leaving to London tomorrow.
Okay.
But I can
Going to give me the number?
give you her number. Actually, I'll send you the number.